am Batman.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the BATTASS Podcast, the Batman the Animated Series show podcast where we talk about Batman the Animated Series. I've been watching a lot of Batman 66, so I'm throwing some Adam West pauses in there, I think, subconsciously. But my name's Clay McCormick, and with me, as always, is Sean Murphy. How you doing, Sean?
So a few episodes ago, I talked about how I didn't believe in inspecting my vehicles. And I've gotten people, at least a dozen people, who wrote or called or said something to me to my face, and they're like, "Are you insane? Like, what if the car's not working? How are you gonna know? You're not a mechanic or anything." So I got a lot of blowback on that. And recently, I got pulled over for speeding. I was doing 70 in a 25. It was 1 a.m. And the cop went from thinking I was drunk to I'm lost to I'm lying to I'm a drug dealer. My wife was with me and she's freaking out because she's not good with cops like I am. I mean, I'm fine around cops, especially when you haven't done anything wrong, which I actually did that night. So I didn't have my car wasn't, it was registered, but I was missing a front plate, which I guess in Maine you're supposed to have two plates, but I don't believe in that either. I had the second plate in the glove compartment, so it's not like I was totally reckless. The car was registered, but it wasn't inspected. And my insurance was expired. But my insurance was valid, but my insurance company requires me to renew it every 3 months, so I'm always forgetting. Even though I'm consistently insured, they don't send the cards enough. I'm trying to explain all this to a cop, who then turns into two cops as his friend shows up, and they're like more and more suspicious of me. And I looked at my wife when they took my information, and they took hers too. I was like gonna start distracting the cop because he wanted me to walk the line. And I had a drink, and I wasn't sure what I would blow. Even though I knew I was okay to drive, I just would rather not spend the night in jail. Luckily, he didn't go there. Once he ran my record and saw that I was clean, he relaxed. And he's like telling me, like, he didn't have me on radar gun, but he estimated my speed to be 70 miles an hour in a 25. And I said, I swear to God, I thought it was 40. And he goes, well, 70 is still a lot faster than that, isn't it? And I'm like, yes, sir, it is. And I looked at my wife, and I'm like, there's no way I'm not getting a ticket. Like, this is it. I've been pulled over 4 times in the last 2 years. They've got to see all these verbal warnings I've gotten. Like, enough's enough, right? And the guy let me go. Even not having a vehicle inspection, he did not let me. He didn't say anything. And I did tell him I got the car in Pennsylvania, and the inspection carries through. And this is a young cop who, these guys aren't lawyers, so as long as you say something that sounds plausible, they'll probably, go with it. And he did. So suck it, everybody. You don't need your vehicle inspected. All right, let's get on to Batman.
That concludes the section where Sean teaches us how to skirt the law, I guess. You just life wisdom coming from this show.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Anyway, we're talking about 2 episodes of Batman the Animated Series today, as always. If you
can't tell this is a Batman podcast already, then you're not paying attention.
Yeah, it's not how to avoid getting tickets on the road in Maine, which apparently now it's a lawless place up there.
Yeah.
But we're talking about 2 episodes. We're talking about Cult of the Cat and Animal Act. We've got an animal twofer for you this week. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back and talk about Cult of the Cat.
There she is! Get her!
Sorry, boys, but Goldie's mine now.
Cult of the Cat, story by Paul Dini and Stan Berkowitz, teleplay by Stan Berkowitz, directed by Butch Lukic, or Lukic? I don't know. In this one, Batman tries to help Catwoman, who is being chased by a cat cult due to a statue she stole. Why is it that like 50%? It seems like 50% of Catwoman episodes revolve around something like supernatural or some sort of cult thing. Like she's been turned into a literal cat. She got some sort of weird animal-based disease.
Mm-hmm.
This one, she's being hunted down by a cat-based cult.
Yeah.
I'm kind of. Why can't they just tell Catwoman stories? I guess. Why do they have to be so on brand?
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like my thought with this was, I don't love the cult thing, but you kind of have to go for it. I mean, this episode's clearly doing a thing, and if you're not down with it, then you're not going to enjoy the rest. And I do enjoy this episode. And normally, I'm not like there's a secret cult of thieves type of guy, you know.
Yeah, I actually, all that being said that I just said, I actually enjoyed this more than those other ones.
Yeah,
those other Catwoman episodes.
Agree.
I feel like the Catwoman episodes have been not the best because they end up getting so gimmicky. Like the best episodes with her are where she's sort of like in a twofer sort of with somebody else. Like that first one where she's stealing the whatever. With her and Robin or something, and the one this season with Nightwing was pretty good.
when she says you're not a boy wonder anymore, you're a man wonder. You're vouching for that one.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah, that's a good line.
All right.
Yeah, I mean that might show up in a Batman comic very soon. Who's to say? Yeah, I like this one a lot more than those ones. I think because the center of it was still Catwoman and Batman kind of like sparring with each other, and I like that stuff a lot.
Yeah.
And I didn't think that. I think like what I agree with what you're saying, where it's like they're definitely going for something, and they definitely go all in on it.
They do,
and
to their credit. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it comes out as being a really fun kind of action adventure. Episode.
Yeah. I really like the Wolverine claws on the ninjas. I like that there's a lot of motorcycles in this, of course. These bikes aren't as well animated. The ellipses on the wheels were a little off, but I give it a pass because they did really well with the claws and the swords and the gunplay and all that stuff. I thought it was really well animated.
Yeah, there's some. It's like gratuitous Wolverine stuff in this one. They're not even trying to make it different.
Yeah.
They're using like the same sound effect and everything.
Like, why wouldn't you do? This is before X-23, so why wouldn't you do two claws? Or make them slightly different shape, or make them less, predator shaped, or whatever. I don't know. Nope, it's just Wolverine, pretty much.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up X-23 because that the female ninja assassin did remind me a lot of her because like the costume is kind of similar. Yeah. It's I like that they were ninjas. I like that they have this cult that they're a part of, which. Cult plus ninja you think is going to breed some sort of honorable fighting style, but they are not above just showing up with a machine gun and trying to shoot you.
Yeah. I mean, there does seem to be some nobility and tradition in the way that the leader is running her test phase. She thinks she's got to go through a few waves of tests or whatever, and he sort of just excuses her from all of that because she brings him Batman unconscious, and he's like, "Yeah, you're done now. You're part of the club."
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like he checked to make sure that her insurance was up to date, and it wasn't, and she didn't have the right plates on her car, and he still let her go.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Maybe I'm very sexy and seductive behind the wheel towards that officer. Maybe there's something about me.
I know. I think you're leaving something out about this interaction with this cop that you had.
I almost asked him if he was a Batman fan. I was almost going to play that card to see if that would get me anything.
I wish you had, and I wish he was like, no, I like Spider-Man, and he gave you a $200
He's like,
ticket.
oh, no, I know who you are, Mr. Murphy, and I'm very much a Marvel person, so fuck you.
Oh, that would have been sweet.
You never know. I mean, you hear rumors cops are all on power kicks. Like, why wouldn't they read comics? I mean, there's a motorcycle gang near me called the Punishers, which is a whole problematic thing in and of itself.
Yeah, okay.
But I think if you ask a cop if he's into comics, there's more likely than if you just asked a random person on the street. I think cops are more likely to have had read comics, or at least consider themselves some kind of action hero based on a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie that has some kind of crossover,
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me.
as he puts on the cuffs.
I didn't notice the motorcycle, but I actually thought the animation was kind of was good in this.
Yeah.
I liked there's a lot of I noticed there's a lot of narrow vertical backgrounds.
Yeah.
Like they do this nice kind of like camera tilt at the beginning through like the sliver of an alleyway, which is very long and vertical.
Yeah.
They've got the chimney climb that they have to do towards them. It's the same kind of thing.
That furnace was cool.
Yeah, and it works really well.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I thought like the sequence where Batman falls down the roof after the chimney explodes was cool. It's a pretty solid episode. There's not really a lot that stands out. I feel like it's like 2 clicks away from being a bad one. Like it very easily could have fallen off the cliff.
Yeah, like you have the bad guy who's stroking a white cat the whole time, so he's very much a James Bond villain. You have they know that they're playing on stereotypes, but they're sort of okay with it. But you're right. I mean, there wasn't really any bad dialogue or any wasted time. There's nothing wrong with the episode. I'm gonna give it a 4, but I don't know if an episode like this can ever be a 5 because it's the nature of it.
Yeah, I guess it kind of speaks to what does a 5 consist of, and like if this is I don't know if I'd give this a 4. Would I? Well, we can get to that towards the end.
But, I'm gonna rethink that too. But yeah.
But like this is a very solid episode.
Yeah.
It's got the animation solid, the character work is solid, the writing it's dealing with a over the top premise that it leans into, but not so much that it gets silly.
Mm-hmm. This is it's as good as it can be considering the subject matter.
Yeah, like what would you think it would need in order to kick it up a couple notches?
Well, first I'd put her in her old costume because I hate Catwoman's costume, but that's I know
okay.
We all agree on that. I don't know, like maybe more between her and Batman. Like, where is their relationship now? Like, I can tell that she still thinks that she can kind of control him by flirting with him, but he's sort of over it. I mean, she literally kisses him, and he's like, "Is that about it?" Turns around and walks away. Maybe a little bit more there. Maybe about how they reconcile the fact that they've chosen to go in different directions, and it's sort of her loss or his loss, depending on how you look at it. Maybe something like that to play up the subplot a bit.
Yeah, I was thinking about it too, and I was trying to think, well, she doesn't really like change at all,
right?
And she doesn't really learn anything,
right? But
does she really need to? It's not really about that so much, but maybe that's what would make it put it over the top, is have it be about more than just fighting off a cat cult.
She does save his life. I mean, she's sort of shifting both sides all the time. And when he comes to take her away, she fools him. He turns around. She knocks him out. She's going to drag him out so they don't find him. So she still thinks that she's acting in his best interest, but she gets caught. They get caught. So they go with it, and she eventually turns and helps Batman out. So if you started the episode off with him assuming she's just all villain now, and he doesn't think there's anything redeemable about her, and then she proves to him that she sort of does still care a little bit because she does save his life, maybe that would be the thing that would make this better. I don't know. Yeah.
And the relationship between them is interesting too, because I have never been a huge fan of Batman and Catwoman legitimately just making out with each other and like being hot in a relationship. I much prefer this kind of dynamic where she's really into him, he's not having any of it, and whether or not she's legitimately into him. Like the subtext on both sides is kind of like in the air, where it's like, is he not having any of it because he's actually into her, and is she really into him, or is she just doing it as a ploy? Like I've always found that a lot more interesting than okay, they're making out now, but I guess that's just me.
Yeah, and I said this before, but I just the visual of 2 masked vigilantes kissing on a rooftop, I always cringe. Anytime Batman shows like romantic interest and he's dressed as a fucking superhero, I just can't take it seriously. But I know that most readers are fine with that, So
yeah, I don't know, because I feel like Batman takes the job extremely seriously.
Yeah,
and so I don't. And I understand that it's like, well, that's what makes it unique is that when he does crack and he does make out with something. But I don't know.
Yeah.
He just seems like he's taking it too seriously all the time in order to make out with somebody while he's on the job,
when he kisses Talia al Ghul at the end of that 2-parter, I'm okay with that. And keep in mind, he's literally bare-chested in the desert at this time. But I think because
as you should be.
Exactly. And you could argue that it's a 3-parter because it starts off with this episode called Vertigo or something.
Right.
And then you get into this 2-parter. So by this time, everything they've been through in that moment, she's sort of been slightly hitting on him for 3 episodes now. He finally gives in and does kiss her. That I'm okay with for some reason. But if it's just like the issue of a new Batman comic with him and Catwoman and they're making out on the cover, like with Gotham skyline behind them, I don't know why. I just have a hard time with that.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. It just seems less fun to me.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have to get into
I think we've said all we can about that. About how you and I hate romance.
Well, it's not even like I don't have a problem with that. It's just I don't know. It's just something about like, especially when I think about the next episode where when he's dressed as Batman, he is so cold towards Dick.
Yeah.
And Dick is still trying to, Dick is a lot warmer to Bruce than Bruce is to Dick when they're in costume.
Agree.
And I just watching that, I keep thinking like, this Batman wouldn't be making out with Pete if he's acting this way to Nightwing and just critiquing his performance on stealthiness or stuff. He's not going to be making out with people, you know?
He would, yeah. Did we ever talk about the Tom King, Catwoman, Batman marriage thing?
I think we've referenced it in passing. I don't think we've ever like really talked about it though.
Yeah, no, it's so Batman was supposed to get married to Catwoman, and DC, I think they've admitted that they fucked up. But a year and a half ago, they played up this whole thing. Batman's getting married, life-changing event, blah blah blah. They called up comic book shops and said, you got to order a lot of this book, and you should throw a little wedding party. And we're even sending you little wedding invitations from Bruce and Selina. So they really went in all on the marketing, to their credit, which, comic companies are not always good at that stuff. So the day came and there was a leak a day or two before, and it was revealed that there was no wedding. It was just a build-up, and at the last minute, they decided not to get married. Everybody was pissed. Comic book shops had ordered wedding cakes and had gone through with this big social event. And, like, I remember talking about this with someone in marketing a year ago, and I asked her, like, what gives? She's like, well, even bad marketing is good marketing. And I go, what? Like, okay. I don't know. Like, yeah, I mean, bad publicity is good publicity. Like, I mean, everyone's heard that phrase, but I beg to differ. And I said, like, I don't know. Like, you really led people on. And if you even try to do another marketing scheme like this, people are not going to believe you. Like, I really feel like that was a giant mistake. And I think she eventually came around, and the whole company did, because Tom's not working on Batman anymore. If that's the reason or not, I don't know. But yeah, I think about that when I think about Catwoman now.
Yeah, I read the story and I didn't mind the story, like, because, but the thing is, like, I don't know. I feel like it is a two-way street, because in the back of my head, I'm always like, you really think that they're gonna you think this is gonna go off without a hitch? Yeah. Like, that's not how stories work, right. Like, very rarely is that how it works. Yeah. Like, the Joker always shows up or whatever. Yeah. It's never this is the issue where everything goes off as planned, right. And the wedding planner checks boxes while everything plays out and they get married. Yeah. That's not how comic books work. No. So on the one hand, it's like, come on, use your brain a little bit here. Obviously, they're not just going to get married. But on the other hand, if you're playing it up that much on a marketing angle, yeah, there's probably some gray area there where it's like, this is probably not the most honest way to handle this event.
No, comic book people do not like to be fucked with like this. They're hard in on they're one of their favorite hobbies. It's expensive. It takes a lot of effort and time, travel to like be into comics and to stay part of the culture, and then to screw with them like this. I mean, they don't mind being misled every now and then in fun ways, but a big one like that, I would have had them get married and stay married for 6 months and then find a reason to break it up. Or they're married and something weird happens on the honeymoon. Like, have them get married, justify the parties and the wedding cakes,
Have them get married, and then after 6 months, everybody wants them to break up because they're like, yeah, this is terrible. They never should have gotten married. This makes for awful stories.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's... if you look at James Bond, right? There's the James Bond movie where James Bond gets married, and that's a big deal. And he does get married, but then the movie ends with his wife getting shot by Blofeld or whoever. So it never sticks. It never goes off without a hitch.
Which movie was that? That wasn't Timothy Dalton.
No, it was on Her Majesty's Secret Service, I believe.
Okay. Which Bond?
Oh shit! I know the one that took over after Connery left, whose name
Not Roger.
Lazenby, George Lazenby.
Oh, that he just did one movie. That guy.
Yes, he just did the one, and
yeah.
then really interesting story actually about that guy. You should people listening who don't know it should look him up. He was basically not an actor. He walked into the production studio and just looked like James Bond, and he was like, "You should give me this part," and they're like, "You know what? Great idea." Yeah. And he lasted for one movie that people didn't like at the time, and then they paid Sean Connery a shitload of money to come back.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Like they might have to pay Robert Downey Jr. to come back if the Marvel Universe doesn't figure itself out now.
Yeah, I'm not worried about that. Well, at least not for a while anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think overall this is a pretty solid one. Do you have something you'd want to draw from it?
Yeah, you know that when they're sneaking out of that chimney, I like the vertical aspect of it. And as you know, I'm a nut for anytime I can do really long vertical panels, I'm down with it. Mm-hmm. So I could see a page where they're starting at the bottom, and you have these nice, sexy, thin slices of panels, and they're moving their way up, and really kind of playing with that format, and then explosion and all that. Yeah, I think I'd go for that. What about you?
Do you have? I wanted to ask you about vertical panels because when I use vertical, I find vertical panels great. I really like them.
Yeah.
But I feel like they can be difficult as far as leading the eye in a storytelling manner because they, by nature, they go down. Like your eye is going to go down. Yeah. But generally, I usually only put them on the left side of the page because most of the time, because if you put them on the right, then you get kind of like can get kind of mixed up with direction or where to go or whatever. Yeah. But even still, it's like by nature, they're going down, but you kind of need the eye to go up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I hear what you're saying.
Do you have a method of reconciling that?
It's tricky because if half of your page is going to be one vertical panel, if it's on the right side, for example, you're going to be reading the first handful of panels on the left, kind of stacked. And your eye, you're going to see what's in that final panel. So you really can't do a big reveal because your gaze is hovering right near that big reveal anyway. Whereas if the big reveal panel was the last panel on the page and it was a horizontal shot, you might actually get there and be like, oh my God, so-and-so is still alive or whatever. But when you stack them vertically, you can't help but skip to the end accidentally. You know what I mean?
Right.
What I do is it's funny, I just did this vertical panel, and I have it on the left side. It doesn't go all the way down. It goes like 3/4 of the way down, and then the last panel of the page is a horizontal one at the base, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you get the vertical. It doesn't distract so much because your eye goes all the way down to the character's feet, then you have to go all the way back up to panel 2. Like I get what you're saying. It's a long way for your gaze to go. So I find that by shortening the vertical panel by 2/3 and then trying to come up with some visual elements to point you back up to panel 2, that's the way I found that it works for me. But I'm always rethinking this shit.
Yeah. And I wonder how much you can avoid that eye line problem with just the dialogue, because the dialogue is probably going to be hanging at around the top of the panel anyway. Yeah. So you might be able to kind of like cheat the eye has to go to the top anyway for the dialogue, and then naturally you're going to move over or whatever. But if there is dialogue in the panel anyway.
Yeah. What would you draw? Did you already answer this? Sorry.
No, I haven't. I feel like I would want to draw those Ninja Wolverine guys.
Yeah.
I think that would be kind of fun, like Batman and Catwoman facing off against those ninja dudes with the Wolverine claws. I think that'd be pretty fun.
Yeah, those are cool, especially for me when they're on a motorcycle too. It's kind of all there.
Yeah, yeah, and also like the setting at the end is really cool. This sort of like weird temple. That's another element. I don't know if the brand manager has his fingers in the number of underground like temples there seem to be all around Gotham City.
Yeah.
Because there seems to be a few of them. This is not the first time we've come across this.
Yeah, it's a whole side of the market that he hasn't really... Maybe he is aware of it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just like too much to deal with because there's sewage problems and
Imagine
it's really old real estate. It's like legacy real estate. So who really owns that anyway?
His eyes, the brand manager's eyes, must light up when a new wealthy guy walks into the shop and he's like, "I want to start a cult, and I need to buy a ton of costumes." Oh boy, I'll give you a discount. Mass
cat or planet. You want a cult based around planets, or you want a cult based on? That's all I got right now.
Yeah, I got these Wolverine claws. I don't know if you can work these in. They're a little.
Well, technically, we can't call them that because of copyright issues. So they're hairy Canadian claws.
I also have a giant white albino cat for some reason. You want to take that too? I'll give it to you for free.
That's the thing that I really enjoy about this concept of this character is that it's not that he like orders this stuff from a catalog. It's just that he acquires it.
Yeah.
So eventually he's like, "Yeah, I went to a yard sale and I got this giant cat.
Yeah.
I'm sure if I paint it white, we can sell it to some idiot starting a cat cult or something."
I think he's got a team of people. One guy is going to the flea markets at like 6 a.m. before all the other dealers. When you get there before everyone else is shopped, and he picks through all the valuable stuff. Another guy who's working in theater and just buying up old costume, boxes and stuff like that. When you think about what it would take to have this side business and to be, it's like you're an antique dealer and the dealer of the dark arts, and those like museum shops in New York with like skulls in the window.
Yeah, you have to think that he's got a guy going to like police auctions because the police are probably just like selling a shit out on bulk, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh well, Batman just took down the Riddler, so we've got 14 bowler hats with question marks on them that we need to get out of our evidence locker. So the brand manager sends his guy down, buys it back at a fraction of the price.
Right.
Then when the Riddler gets out, he comes back to the brand manager, and the Riddler's like, these are the same ones you sold me last time. He's like, "Well, you shouldn't have got caught." And so,
you know what? If you were smart, you would put a tracer in one of these hats and then wait for it to resurface on the street, and then you'd pick up the Riddler or some wannabe Riddler guy again.
Yeah.
But I'll bet the brand manager has like scanners. Like when you go through like Long Beach with a shipment into this country, they have to scan it for a while. They bring down like search dog. I bet he's got something like that where he can X-ray everything.
Yeah. Man,
there's a lot to this character.
Yeah, it's really starting to branch out into a whole ecosystem. Anyway, so what do you think this one?
I'm going to adjust to a high 3.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a high 3. It's missing, excuse me, it's missing something from like kicking it up a notch. But like I think especially in this season, it stands out because a lot of these episodes that are just kind of action episodes, we found to be like lacking in story and lacking in some sort of extra element.
Yeah,
and this one has the Batman and Catwoman interactions that I think work really well. And it also doesn't end super abruptly like they tend to.
Yeah, you're right. This one, the pacing's a bit better on this than normal.
Yeah.
But not as good as the next one as far as pacing.
Yeah, the next one's pretty solid, which we will get into in a second.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll talk about Animal Act.
Not so fast, big fella.
You heard him.
All right, Animal Act, written by Hilary J. Bader, directed by Kurt Gaeta. And in this one, a series of thefts is being committed. Is that grammatically correct? Yeah, I guess so. A series of robberies is being committed by circus animals in a town where Nightwing's old circus is performing. Is it an old friend that is training the animals to steal or someone else?
Yeah, man. What I love about this episode the most is you get more look at Nightwing's sweet dragon-style Japanese apartment.
Yes, yeah. we get the return of the Japanese apartment, and we also see his hair pulled back into a ponytail, which makes me doubly sure that it is in fact a mullet. Because when he's Nightwing, it's just flowing free, and he's still got that short hair on the top.
Man, we thought
unless
Batman
it's really
was
greased
the world's
down.
Greatest detective.
Yeah.
It's funny. I love the return to the circus life. I like especially because he's older now and everyone calls him Dickie. And did you know that it was the Mad Hatter right away when you saw that clown?
I did. Weirdly enough, I had seen the breakdown of the episode, so I knew he was in it. But as soon as I saw that clown, I was like, that just looks like the Mad Hatter with face paint on.
Yeah. If you're looking for it, yeah. But they do plant him very well. Like, I think he pops up twice.
Yes.
And then at the end, it's not so much of a... Yeah. I was a little unnerved because you're right. You mentioned previously that Bruce is so rigid with the Bat family. Like, he can't even take a joke. He's such a straight man that the other character inevitably becomes the comic relief. And you don't have to work hard. Like, when Batman shows up in Dick's apartment, Dick's like, thanks for knocking. I mean, and that's not like ha-ha funny, but still, Dick is the comic relief. And Batman, for as warm as he is to Selina Kyle, he's certainly pretty cold to his kids.
Yeah, and that first scene when Nightwing shows up and Robin's like psyched to see him, and then Batman, the first thing Batman says is you should work on your...
I heard you walking a mile away or whatever.
Yeah. It is very much like a fatherly thing where it's like, hey, I did this, and they're like, well, how come you didn't do this? And like, okay.
Yeah. There's also this great moment in the apartment when Batman has come in, and there's this, him and Dick are staring at each other, and it's silent, and then Batman's beeper goes off, and they take another second and a half to have them stare at each other quietly before Batman answers it. And that's a very unlike this season, because normally they don't take moments like this. Like, this feels like a more season 1 style pacing for me.
Yeah, it does. And also the setting of the episode feels that way too.
Yeah.
The thing that's missing from this for me though is I wish there was more of Dick back at the circus, because you only get like a couple scenes and it's only a little bit of interaction. I kind of wish. I'm glad they didn't do any flashbacks, because I feel like you easily could have done. Oh, Dick's back at the circus. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he has there's 5 minutes of what it was like for him at the circus as a kid. And it's like, I don't really think you need to do any of that stuff. But
it's funny you say that, because I thought to make this a 5, I would have, and this would change the episode completely. I agree. I would have gone into flashback, and you can see Dick with his family and get more context there, and then show this girl who he was friends with, and then show where they are right now. But that's a totally different episode. She would need to be rewritten. Like, that's obviously what they're not trying to do that here. I get that. Right. But I kind of want to see an episode that's a flashback for Dick, just to revisit the old circus days and to give his mom and dad more context, you know?
Yeah, I am kind of surprised they didn't do it, because that is a context with him that they have never really explored, at least not that I can remember. I don't think they've ever done like a circus-centric episode with him.
No, except for the origin,
sure,
the 2-parter, but that's it.
Yeah, but since then, it seems like him going back to the circus should be a bigger deal, especially since everybody knows. Like, if it was just any circus, then fine, whatever. But since this is the one that he traveled with and everybody knows him, I'm surprised that they didn't lean into that stuff a little bit more.
I felt sort of unnerved watching Bruce Wayne eat popcorn, jauntily walking next to Dick, and like, a nice day, isn't it? I don't know what it is about that. For a guy that's so stone cold in the apartment, like when he puts that cowl on, he just turns into a dick. But you give him some popcorn, he's your best bud.
Yeah, you just got to catch him on a day when he's not in costume, and then he's your best friend.
Yeah.
The girl in question is voiced again by Jane Wideland from the Go-Go's again. She had a small part in the Firefly episode, but she's got a much bigger part in this one.
The girl from Bill and Ted.
Yep.
Man, I gotta look her up. Is she still hot? I bet she is. She's got one of those bodies. You can just tell. Even in that like big ass sweatshirt in Bill and Ted, you could tell that there was something going on underneath. Hold on. What's her name?
Well, Jane Wideland, Wiedlin. I think it's either I-E or E-I. I think it's I-E.
All right. Wideland. Wyman? No.
Nope, with a D.
Okay, Wideland. All right, let me see here. All right, images.
Hold on, everybody. Hold on. We're finding out. Sean's finding out.
So Wiedlin.
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. No, there's not much on her. Maybe if I spell her name wrong, you can talk about something else while I'm doing this, Clay. This is just getting weird.
We're just waiting. We're just waiting to find out.
All right, I'm looking at her. All right, I got her. Yeah, she's still hot. She's still got like Jonah Jet sex appeal. Yeah, good Joan of Arc too.
Glad that we all figured that out.
The eyebrows are a little thick. I don't know if you need to do that. I'm sure if you guys were all, I mean, you would all agree with me if you were here. Trust me. All right, enough of that.
But I thought she was really good. She gives a good performance as that character.
Yeah.
I think she's got some chemistry with the guy who plays Dick Grayson.
Yeah.
Yeah, for a character like it's just so strange to me because like that character too is very much like, oh, this is a girl that he knew when he was younger.
Mm-hmm.
I was really surprised that they didn't give any backstory there. Like maybe they had a fling when they were really young or something. There's none of that. It's just like, oh, this is someone I know. Yeah, they both kind of acknowledge that they're hot now.
Yeah, I mean,
that's kind of it.
I mean, the visual of her with that really cool snake around her is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Like I would have, hello, Dick, what are you, dead? Come on.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like if he's there exploring if he's there investigating something and has to actually spend time at the circus, then you get some opportunity for them to interact a little bit more and, either rekindle something or start something maybe. And I wonder if it's one of the failings of this season where they don't do that, where they have to kind of focus in on the just the plot instead of letting the story breathe a little more.
And the action too. I mean, it was a cool idea to have the Mad Hatter control a bunch of circus show freaks, performers, because they give you a chance to have like the guy that spits fire, the elephants, the lion, whatever it is. Yeah. That was pretty cool. Like I could see what they were aiming for. And for a kid show, I guess that's the obvious. But yeah, like you, I'm like, I kind of want to know what's going on with this female character. And like I said, like I wouldn't mind more flashbacks, but I think it should be like the next episode. If they ever revisit this character, that's what I'd want to see.
Yeah, I would say so too. I thought the most hilarious part of this episode was when he reveals himself. When the Mad Hatter reveals himself, he goes over and takes the chips off of the bears when they bring the bears back, and he's like, "I have to." He's like, "I have to make sure nobody finds these chips," and it's like the size of a brick on a bear. Where's he hiding that?
A lot of scruff on bears. I guess he didn't know that.
He's got the little tiny ones that he can stick on humans, like just behind the ear. But for bears and stuff, he needs this gigantic like motherboard that he staples to their back.
Yeah, no, and it's like bears are dumb. Their brains are small. You don't need as big of a microchip, you would assume.
Yeah, I guess maybe the technology just isn't there yet.
I might have missed this, but why was he using animals to steal things? Was there anything more to it than that?
Great question, actually.
Okay. Like, was he building something? Why animals? How did he get this idea?
I actually don't know. That's a really good question. Do they not cover that? I mean, they might have covered it, and I just...
Yeah. I missed it. I thought you would catch it, so...
Is this the first episode? Yeah, this is the first... He shows up
this is the first Hatter episode.
Yeah, he shows up in the talk show in Over the Edge when they have the villains on, but he doesn't do anything there. But this is the first Mad Hatter episode of this new season.
I think first and last. Although, for a Superman episode where Superman is pretending to be Batman, you do have Mad Hatter and Bane.
Oh, right. That's a good one. I remember that one.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the thing, is they redesigned, even the Riddler is wearing green tights in this season, but he only has one appearance, I think.
Does the Riddler get an episode to himself? Because that design looks terrible.
Yeah,
it looks like they just did it to do it, and they didn't actually think about it.
Yeah, I remember him being in one. It might be the same Superman episode I'm thinking about, because I remember he was tied up. His wrists were tied, and somebody picked him up with like a crane, and his legs were dangling in the air or whatever, and he just looked dumb. Yeah. I don't think there's a bona fide Riddler episode in this season.
Yeah. Well, that's too bad. One of the things I've been surprised about in this whole series is how few Riddler episodes there are. There's only like 3 or 4, I think, and they're all very similar.
Yeah, I mean, even that book I have, and I didn't know, by the way, this book that Joe, our friend, was recommending that we get. It's like the Batman animated series handbook from the Warner Brothers store back in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And I have a copy, and I didn't know that it was. If you try to buy it now used, it's like $150. But
yeah, I think it's out of print now. Yeah.
They talk about how how hard Riddler was to write and how they were the most brutal scripts. And you and I joked before, like, you basically repeated one episode, so how hard can it be to rip yourself off? But
right.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that just shows how difficult they were to write if they did the same episode twice, basically.
Yeah. It is hard to when you're writing a character who speaks a certain way. Like when I wrote Mad Hatter, I had to pore through these Lewis Carroll quotes and try to find one that could possibly be twisted into something clever that he might say to Batman. Or if I'm writing Joker, I try to write these bad jokes and try to figure out bad puns. That, normally when you write characters, you just think of it as speaking as you would in your own head. But when they have a specific spin, then it does slow you down as far as writing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I when I was doing Bloody Hell, I had to kind of balance language affect a bit because these the characters in the first issue or the first chapter are all English soldiers from the early 1900s, like 1914, 1918. And so I'm writing it and I'm going like, all right, this could turn into parody really quickly if I try to really lean into what this might sound like. But on the other hand, I have to make sure it doesn't just sound like me talking the way that I talk. And how much slang from the time do you want to throw in before it starts feeling like you're forcing it? That kind of stuff gets interesting. Yeah. And when the Vikings showed up, that was a whole different thing because it's like I have to write these characters. I'm writing the Vikings kind of like larger than life,
Right.
Kind of Thor-esque, but I didn't want to go all the way into like Thor dialogue where it's lots of like verilies and lo he hath come over the mountain, that kind of crap.
Yeah, you want to cut down the lows and the haths. I think dropping in a word into like a reminder every now and then. It's like when Claremont would write Rogue, he would have her say y'all.
Claremont loved that shit. He was all over that shit.
But it wasn't like, because you actually wrote if you actually wrote a Southern accent the way that it sounds, it would be almost really, really hard to read because it's such a thick accent. But if you just have a y'all in there every now and then, it's like, oh yeah, she's from the South.
Yeah, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but when I was doing my online book Dead Meat years ago, I had one character who was English, and I was trying to figure out how to write his dialogue without resorting into like, this is what I think a Cockney person sounds like.
Yeah.
And the solution that I found was to, as much as possible or as often as possible, use English spellings of words. So if it was color, I would throw in the U. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I think is something you can only really do in print because that pretty immediately. I mean, well, if you notice it, it immediately tells you that this person is English or European or whatever.
Right.
But I don't know if that's too subtle to really come across. But I thought it was kind of clever.
Yeah, no, that is, man. When I was writing Punk Rock Jesus, I had a character from Northern Ireland, and instead of using the word for, I said fur, like F-E-R.
Oh, sure.
And a couple other tweaks that I thought I invented. And then I read Preacher, and I saw Garth had done the same exact thing. I'm like, oh, all right, I'm not as clever as I thought.
Yeah. There's a sweet spot to doing that stuff where it doesn't overpower things, and just like from a writing standpoint too, like if you're doing that Claremont stuff where I'm writing Banshee, so everything he says has to be phonetically with an Irish accent. It's like, that's just gonna slow you down, man. Try to think out, okay, I can't write didn't, I have to write dinnae, D-I-N-N-A-E, in order to make this. And it's like, do you really have to do that? Probably not.
If you did dinnae every now and then, like 3 times a book, and that's the only thing you did, then maybe it would work. But that's going to be a record scratch for most readers.
Yeah, I at least definitely now. Maybe maybe it wasn't as much at the time, because I mean, when he started doing that, I think was when he did the new X-Men, where it was a multicultural global team. And I guess that kind of is like really leaning into the fact that each one of these characters is from a different part of the world if they're speaking differently.
Yeah.
And maybe that doesn't get across as much if they're all just speaking like,
Yeah.
how you write Cyclops is the way you write Sunfire is the way you write Banshee. Maybe it doesn't come across as well.
Yeah. You're talking about Dead Meat. I was going to ask, this is going to be a tangent. What do you think about when a creator has their first idea or their big idea that they've had since you're in high school and you start thinking of like, I'm going to do a comic one day and this is going to be it. And it slowly starts to transform. And over the years, into your 20s, you kind of add on more stuff like, ooh, I could fit that into Dead Meat too. And I don't know if Dead Meat was that project for you, but it feels like most creators by their mid-20s have an idea that they've been cooking for at least 5 years. And it's a mix of all their favorite things. And most of the time, these things don't get off the ground. But I'm always curious when a creator decides to move on from that and to just put it on the back burner, like what makes them realize, hey, maybe you should walk away from that and start something new. Maybe that you're too close to that project for too long.
Well, Dead Meat very much was that project.
Okay.
I had started thinking that stuff up when I was in high school, actually.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things I was always kind of like tinkering with it and adding stuff to it, like you're saying, up through college. My first ever professionally published work was in Heavy Metal Magazine with a short that was Dead Meat.
Yeah.
And so it's it had been the thing that was just my personal comic that I had been working on. And when I got out of college, I was doing other stuff and I was taking these jobs, freelancing jobs, and it wasn't really very satisfying to me. Mm-hmm. And I eventually decided that I wanted to just draw a comic, and I was like, all right, if I'm going to just have to do this myself. And Dead Meat was the one that I had in my mind long enough that I knew that I could put it out there and I could actually create it. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I went with. And I think it took me, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now if I hadn't done that. Mm-hmm. But I also definitely came to a point where I was like, okay, I think I have to just let this go.
Yeah.
Because I was doing that up through, I think it had started to slow down right around the time when I did the apprenticeship with you. Maybe I think it was probably a couple months after that. I was still kind of doing it, but it wasn't coming out as frequently as it had been.
I remember I remember saying to you once in class, in front of everybody, and I regretted this immediately. And I don't know if I've ever apologized to you for this. In class is loose. We're up in my attic with 5 drawing desks and with music going and a space heater. And you were talking about Dead Meat. Mm-hmm. And you had the night before you had told us about your girlfriend and how you had been friends with her forever, and it took you like at least 5 years before you even asked her out or something like that.
That's the simplification of the story, but sure.
Okay. Well, for the sake of argument, that's what I remember you saying. And I said to you, and your girlfriend's name is Caitlin. I go, don't let Dead Meat be your next Caitlin. Like, it took you 5 years before you had the balls to actually pony up and ask her out. And then once you did, and I said, well, with bloody hell, like, you've been spending all this time putting it together and thinking about it. You had to either pull the trigger on this thing or move on. And I remember, and I didn't mean for it to get personal, but you telling a story the night before about you and your girlfriend and me throwing it back in your face. And I wasn't trying to be mean, but I wouldn't have worded it. In hindsight, I wish I hadn't worded it like that. I was basically saying you got to shit or get off the pot. Mm-hmm. But I used this personal story you had told the day before in front of everybody. And I don't know if that was the best move, so I am sorry.
Well, it's okay. I didn't really take the advice as good advice anyway, because clearly things worked out well with my girlfriend. So, I mean.
And you eventually did move on from bloody hell. I keep doing that. And Dead Meat.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to say to you, like, I don't know. I mean, maybe this is a great idea, but you've had this with you for so long. Maybe you should just put it on the back burner for now. But what I really wanted to say is I think you just need to move past this, man. I think it's done. And you need to just think about doing something else from now on, Yeah, and I mean, I had never if it had turned out to be something that I could do forever, that would have been great. But I had always intended it to basically just be something that I could do, that I could produce a book and get it out there. And I mean, I
get to the apprenticeship if I don't do dead meat.
Totally.
I don't start doing conventions if I don't do dead meat. So it's like it was the step I had to take in order to get to what I wanted to do.
Right.
And when I was doing it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. No, I remember saying to you too, like, I agree. Like, it's not a waste of time. Just because this thing doesn't get published didn't mean that it wasn't worth something. And like you said, it brought you to the apprenticeship. It got you were always working on your drawing, and I saw you get better every year that I knew you. And, but it seemed like there was such a heavy weight and cloud that was dead meat that I was like, I don't know, man. I think you've evolved as a writer too, that maybe this isn't even worth fixing. Maybe you should just scrap it and start something brand new, given your new skill set, Yeah,
I mean, I learned it was
because you didn't want to give it up. You were very much like not ready to move on from it.
Yeah, I think at the time it was just because like it was what I was doing, and I wanted to make sure, because I had spent 5 years. Was it 5 years? Yeah, probably about 5 years, like building that as a brand as much as one can, and to varying degrees of success, and it was working out pretty well. But obviously, I had hit a wall. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have been at the apprenticeship if I hadn't hit a wall.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it took. When I got back and I started looking at other stuff, I knew it was over. I pretty much knew it was over.
Yeah.
Which it still lives on in my Twitter handle, which apparently I can change. I just haven't done it yet.
No, keep it, man. It's too late now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad you moved on from it, and maybe one day you'll find a way to grab some of the subplots in that story and do something new with it. But I think it was definitely part of your evolution. Was
definitely, yeah.
Setting that down finally, and I think a lot of creators have those ideas. In fact, well, some of them don't, and the ones who don't, to me, should never try writing. When I looked at you and Tana, because Tana also had her own comics going. You guys are obviously writers because you are writing as well as drawing, and you just think like a writer. And a lot of artists aren't like that. They don't necessarily have their dead meat.
Yeah. I mean, it hit.
It says something that you guys were doing that. You were doing double duty by trying to be a writer, and I really do admire that about you too.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Mostly
I
Tana.
think
Go ahead.
Yeah, of course. No, I feel like you have to, if you're capable of doing it, and you have to make your own opportunities if you can.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure
the advice, anytime, I know this is stupid advice and it's really easy to say, but anytime someone comes up to me at a convention and goes, well, what do I have to do to get into comics? And I say, well, you just make comics. Like, just do it. Like, if you can draw, you can probably write to some extent. So there's probably no reason why you can't do both. And just do it. Every drawing you do is going to be better than the last one.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I think your dead meat idea was probably better than mine, the one that I had been working on for way too long that I had to give up too.
Which was what?
It was called. His name was Discus. I created him in the 90s. He looked like Spider-Man, but he had like metal spider eyes, if that makes sense. And then I got into Gambit.
No, it does not make sense, but I'll take your word for it.
And you can imagine all the rendering, too, that would go with the, shiny Colossus-style rendering.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Then I got into Gambit. So then Discus had hair like Gambit, and then he had a trench coat. Mm-hmm. And then I got into the Rocketeer, and I'm like, well, a bomber jacket's better. And it would drive me nuts. I'd be in class throughout grade school, junior high, and high school, and I'm like, what's gonna make or break Discus is which jacket do I give him? And I remember going back and forth and literally losing sleep over it. And of course, because his name was Discus, he had a superpower, was throwing things, and he could like enhance the he could control the speed of moving objects, whatever. So
was it only discus shaped things?
Anything.
So he was powerless in a room full of baseballs, but if there was a platter nearby, he could kill everybody.
I thought about this, man. So he had 2 commas as weapons, and a comma is not a very common weapon, but it's like there's a sickle. It's like a handheld sickle in Korea.
Oh, the short staff sickle things. Yeah, okay.
So they would pop open, and he could throw those. And I thought, well, what if he was on a speeding car? He could charge the car up and then and slow the car down or speed it up. So he could basically take basically like Gambit.
Yep.
And then there was a Spawn element, and then there was a Highlander element, and then I had him like as a sword. He used swords, and he lived in this like Irish chapel built on this like gothic looking island off the coast, and I don't know, it was just too gunked up with too much bullshit. And I had it with me, and then I got into Travis Touret, so Discus had a lot more shiny black tight leather on him. And then I remember taking that into college, and I started learning about storytelling, and I realized that Discus was just a bad mix of all this shit from the 80s and 90s that was never going to go into. I don't know. I should spite myself and actually publish a Discus comic someday.
I was going to ask. I was like, if I ever get the chance, I want to get a Discus, a modern day drawing of Discus from you.
I got to dig up an old drawing. I don't know if I have any left, but yeah, I'll find a way to post it.
Yeah.
But I don't want anyone stealing my awesome idea.
Yeah, I ran through so many of those when I was a kid, because it was like I was constantly coming up with characters, but like I never came up with stories. I just came up with characters. I even actually came up with a character called Preacher before I knew about the other book. Yeah. And Preacher was basically just a guy, a priest in a trench coat with a shotgun. And also, I realized I didn't know how to spell preacher, but I got ahead of myself because the visual in my head, I had preacher, but the T in preacher was a cross.
Ooh.
Only later did I realize there is no T in preacher, which really kind of ruined the whole concept for me.
Damn it. I mean, the T is a cross. Obviously, that's been done. But I feel like the word preacher needs a T in it now.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
you're thinking priest. If you called him priester or something.
Yeah, priester. The priester.
It's funny. When I first was spelling the word discus, I would accidentally spell it discuss. And I kept fucking up his name for a good part of my teens.
He just shows up and goes, "Wait a minute, maybe we should talk this out."
Oh man,
Priester. If Ricardo and I ever get to do our wrestling comic, we're gonna make sure one of the background wrestlers is Discus.
I think Priester is a great. Honestly, man, and because the T isn't even centered, you have this like asymmetrical, lopsided logo. I think it. Even,
if I can figure out what a priester does, maybe that'll be my next book.
It's a priest, but with more activity. It's more of an action word, a priester. A guy who makes priests.
Yeah, there you go.
We'll think of something. Don't worry.
Yeah, but yeah, Dead Meat was the first one where I was like, oh, I have a story for this. Yeah. I can figure out. I always the biggest my biggest gripe in my career is that every idea I come up with, I'm usually ahead of the curve, but then somebody else ends up putting it out a very similar thing before I do. So I did Dead Meat was a zombie comic, and I came up with it when zombies were not hot. They were not the cool thing. Mm-hmm. And then I sat and I watched the entire evolution of the zombie genre to the point where it's dead again, essentially now for the most part, or at least everything else has been done. I will say, after 20 years, no one has done the idea that was at the core of Dead Meat.
Okay.
And I'm not going to say what it is, just on the off chance that I ever get to use it.
If Robert Kirkman is listening, because I'm sure he's got nothing better to do right now than steal your idea, or Priester, or Discus.
Hey man, it happens. It happens all the time. Have you seen half the stuff? It's all still phones hear everything, man. We're literally recording this right now.
Did I tell you I accidentally stole a Kirkman idea and he reached out to me?
Oh yes, in plot holes. Just the character name, right? Yeah.
Not only that, but he was like a biped barbarian based off of a cat. So.
Oh right, yeah.
Yeah. Luckily, he was nice enough to calmly tell me and let me do the right thing rather than scream at me. But it really was an honest mistake, unlike Priester.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, did you have? Sorry, one more thing, and then we can
sure.
Did you create your own? Did you have like when you were creating characters? Mm-hmm. Did you create the X-Men proxy team? Like, here's my Wolverine. Here's my Hulk. Here's my leader.
I probably did. I don't know if I did a direct proxy though.
Yeah.
Not that I can think of. Not directly. I don't.
Because it felt like every team needed a guy with blades.
Right.
You needed a big, strong guy. You needed a hot girl with psychic powers.
Yeah. I remember. I don't think I did that, but what I did do was I had a very limited idea of how superpowers were doled out when I was a child. And I had a character called Lightning Man, and he could shoot lightning from his hands, and he got that power because he was a scientist, and he got struck by lightning and smashed through a bunch of chemicals, which is literally the way the Flash got his powers, and I'm pretty sure I came up with that because I was watching the Flash show in the 90s.
Yeah.
And he had a partner named Arrow Man. And I actually did like comic for these guys, and I did a comic of the origin of Lightning Man. And Arrow Man, when it came time to develop his origin, which is his powers were that he could shoot like electrical powered arrows from his hands, he got those powers by being struck by an electrified arrow, which knocked him through a bunch of chemicals. So my idea of where the powers came from were entirely chemical based at that point. Chemical
and falling,
lightning.
and a guy crashing and being thrown into some kind of shelving where these chemicals were.
An electric current and chemicals, and the right conductor will give you whatever power you need. Apparently,
so you should do a team called the Conductors, and every team member is sort of tongue in cheek, but every team member is like, "How'd you get your powers?" And they go, "Well, I was doing this and that in the lab, and I was struck by lightning while I was petting a dog, so I turned into a dog." And the next guy's like, "That's so funny. I got struck by lightning while I was around chemicals. So now I'm Chemical Man." And they don't realize that maybe they were created for a reason.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Yeah. I actually in my back pocket I've got, and it doesn't really have a story yet, but I've got a team of characters that are all very tongue-in-cheek characters. One of them is named Superface, and his power is that he can extend his face out to headbutt you, and that's it.
Not his head. His face.
No, just his face. Yep, just the front part of his face extends like a telescoping arm and punches you in the face.
It's a face butt because I guess your forehead would come
basically,
with you.
Yeah.
All right,
and he's got a partner named Finger Blast who just has a bunch of guns on his fingers.
I think I practiced that. I've seen that superpower practiced in a bar in Boston once.
Yeah, but it's
dude, if you come up with Finger Blaster, you're asking for it. I mean, come on.
No, that's the point. Like that's this team of characters is very specifically tongue in cheek about what they do and what their names are. But
okay, yeah. I had a villain. This is the worst story I've ever wrote, and I was like 12. So there was a villain who was allergic to gold.
Sure.
I was tired of writing him, so I had the good guy convince him to commit suicide by walking into a jewelry store, and then that was it.
That's
like,
okay.
You can't just kill him. This has to be better than that.
Okay, two things. One, brilliant way to get rid of a villain. Two, I'm so impressed that you actually finished the book. You finished the story. You didn't just stop doing it. You said, "I'm tired of doing this. I need to kill this guy off."
And I actually did it. He's
That's
like,
amazing.
"No, not ... gold." Drawn on lined paper.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Yep. I don't even know what his
Anyway.
name was, but yeah, allergic to gold because it was like kryptonite.
Yeah. No, it all tracks.
If one day, if you and I somehow get cancer together, or if we're hit by lightning and we both have a year to live, we should just do a book of our bad ideas. Just put it all out there.
Well, I mean, I don't know. If we get hit by the right lightning, we might end up with superpowers based on my understanding of it. But
In a Clay McCormick book.
yes, yeah.
Superpower powers is like before the credits.
But yeah, just to wrap this up, what would you want to draw from this circus episode of Batman?
You go ahead. I forgot mine.
I think I'd like to draw that girl with the snake.
Yeah.
She seems pretty cool. She'd be a fun character to play with, and you get the snake element's cool, and I think that'd be fun.
It's funny when you draw snakes. Like I always think of when Mike Mignola does it, and Mike is not a guy that's into crazy detail, but when he draws a snake, he's like scale, scale, and they have slightly darker, slightly like shaded. Like for a guy that hates detail, like his snakes, and they're really when you're rendering a snake, you're kind of committed to the scales. Like you're gonna piss away at least 3 hours on this thing. But when it's done right, it looks good.
Yeah, definitely. That is one of those things where every time I see it, I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
Is there a way around this?
I know. Can I block out? Can the snake be in the shadow somehow, or half of them covered by a leaf in the foreground?
Yeah.
I would think I would draw the lion fight scene at the end when Batman rodeo ties a lion.
Oh yeah.
I like so when I use a brush, I'll purposefully fan it out and break the bristles a little bit.
Oh sure.
So
yeah.
you're sort of getting this like wispy, thin, organic line weight, and you'll see it all throughout my art. Sometimes I'll throw it on noses and faces and cheeks, but on animals, I usually use it as my containment line on the outside of the figure. And I like.
Oh sure.
But drawing lions or any kind of animals, like you really got to commit. What I did, I found the trick to drawing animals, and this will be quick. You go to Michael's, you go to the toy section, and they'll usually sell like a plastic tube of farm animals, lions, tigers, whatever. Yeah. And I find having even a bad 3D model, at least you got something to look at, and you could turn the lion's head around in space, and like you're way more equipped than you would be just looking it up on Google, unless you're gonna like exactly swipe. Like I have a bunch of just bins of farm animals and tigers and stuff, and horses especially. Horses are so hard that I find little action figures are actually the best thing.
Yeah, the thing that always kills me is very rarely do you have to draw. Well, I mean you do have to draw this, but when you draw a horse, usually you have to draw a horse in action in some way, where it's either like running and it's like there's only so many pictures. Like it's difficult to compose a shot with a running or jumping horse in a way that allows you to find reference of the horse doing that thing. Yeah. So it's like I did one thing once where I was like, all right, I need this like rearing back horse. And so I was looking at a bunch of stuff, and I finally came across like a statue, like a Wonder Woman statue or something of her riding a horse. I'm like, oh, that's great. It's like a few pictures in the round or whatever. Yeah. But it's tough. It's difficult to find different angles on some of those animals. Yeah,
horses are one of those scary things that comic artists avoid, like horses and cars. The trick to horses is the asses of horses are much bigger than you think. Like the power of a horse comes from the ass, and the hooves are way smaller than you think. When horses don't look right, usually it's the hooves are too big, unless it's a Clydesdale, and that's a different story. But and then the way the head and the neck combine, it's such a funky looking animal.
I don't find the body that difficult, but the head and the neck can be very difficult to parse out.
Yeah, man, we covered a lot in this episode.
Yeah, I know. We? Yeah,
I never thought I'd be telling you about Discus.
We started with breaking road laws, and we're ending with talking about horses.
So our shtick seems to be this, and you're not stopping me, so I'm going to continue to do it. But you'll introduce the show, and you'll be like, Sean, how you doing? And I'll come in with like oh man, and I'll take the steering wheel and I'll turn it in the direction that you're not ready for, and then I'll see how you can get us back on track.
And I always do.
You always do.
What would you rate this episode?
I'm gonna go 4. I think it's a great detective story. The stakes aren't crazy, but I think it's really well done, classic style. Batman's a detective figuring stuff out one bit at a time, and you get enough of the hesitancy between him and Nightwing, which is cool. And you have like the hero worship that Tim has for Nightwing. You can tell Tim's kind of a fanboy, so I really like the subplot as well as the plot. So I'm gonna go 4.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go 3, just because I wish that they had done more with the
girl,
Dick in the circus stuff.
Yeah. But not flashback.
I don't know. Yeah, well, yeah. It was, however they decided to do it. I don't know if that's necessarily fair, because it is a different episode at that point. But I feel like they had a great concept that they didn't fully squeeze everything out of. But that being said, it is good. These have been too good. I'll be honest with you. Both of these are much better than I assumed they would be, because generally the animal episodes, I kind of go like,
I was just going to say at the very beginning of this, like anytime there's an animal in any episode of Batman, I always cringe, because I think the Moon of the Wolf was terrible. Critters is terrible. The Catwoman stuff, where she's poisoned by a cat, whatever it is, like it just But so when I put these on, I'm like, here we go, and I was pleasantly surprised to realize that I was wrong.
Yeah, me too. I think that's going to do it for Cult of the Cat and Animal Act. If you enjoyed the show, thanks for listening. Tell your friends. Give us a rating or review on iTunes if people still do that. I'm not sure. Hopefully,
We would love to see some fan art of Priester and Discus.
Yes, I would like to see some fan art of Priester, Discus, Arrow Man, and Lightning Man. Anything you guys want.
And the guy who's allergic to gold who commits suicide in a jewelry store.
Yeah, what does he look like? Is he?
I don't even know. What is his name?
Yeah, I don't know. We'll leave that up to you, our listeners, to come up with those amazing answers.
I mean, if you're going to commit suicide, you could just jump off a bridge. You don't need to actually use your super villain weakness to do it, you know?
Well, but you convinced, didn't he didn't the hero convince him to do it?
Yeah, that's the other thing. What kind of hero are you if you
that's pretty dark, man.
Yeah, it was.
Anyway.
All right.
Thank you guys for listening. We will be back next time with Old Wounds. Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Old Wounds and The Demon Within.
Ooh, two good ones.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you, man.
We'll see you guys next time.